Imagine a world where survival wasn't guaranteed, where every sunrise brought the risk of hunger, predators, or exile. Now picture this. In that harsh Stone Age reality, one act carried more power than fire or weapons sex. But it wasn't just about desire. It was survival strategy, social currency, and the invisible glue that held tribes together. What role did intimacy really play in shaping human history? The answers might surprise you, and even make you rethink what it means to be human today. When we imagine the Stone Age, it's easy to think of cave paintings, fire, and hunting. But there's something even more important that rarely gets talked about: intimacy. In a world where survival was a daily battle, sex wasn't just about passion, it was about staying alive. For early humans, food was scarce, predators were everywhere, and trust was the most valuable resource a person could offer. In this harsh setting, sex became more than an act of desire, turned into a strategy. It forged bonds, secured loyalty, and sometimes even decided who lived and who did. Think about it. A skilled hunter might return to camp with fresh meat, but sharing that food wasn't always generosity, was a message. By choosing who to feed, who to comfort, and who to bond with, he wasn't only giving away resources, he was strengthening his influence and ensuring allies by his side. In other words, intimacy wasn't just about attraction, it was power. And in the fragile world of the Stone Age, that power could mean protection from starvation, enemies, or even exile. Around the firelight, when the hunt was over and shadows flickered on the cave walls, intimacy shaped more than just moments of closeness, shaped the tribe itself. A single glance, a subtle touch, or even a whispered promise could ripple through the group like an unspoken announcement. Alliances were forming, rivalries were brewing, and loyalties were being tested. This wasn't random attraction, it was politics at its most primal. Sex could prevent conflict, reward cooperation, or quietly elevate someone's standing. A woman who chose a strong hunter wasn't just choosing passion, she was choosing protection for herself and her children. A man who formed bonds across family lines could expand his influence and secure allies, creating peace without bloodshed. But there was risk. Forbidden pairings sparked jealousy, and jealousy could quickly erupt into conflict. Tribes had to adapt, building unwritten rules, respect bonds, share fairly, and avoid betrayal. These rules weren't carved into stone, but into behavior, because breaking them could mean exile. And in a world where survival depended on cooperation, exile was worse than death. Intimacy wasn't just desire, it was a language, one that carried the weight of loyalty, power, and survival itself. Beyond the firelight, intimacy became something deeper than instinct. It was negotiation. Imagine a hunter returning with a fresh deer or mammoth meat. Offering this wasn't just generosity, it was a signal. I choose you, I trust you, stand with me. Sex became both a reward and a promise, a silent contract that tied individuals closer together. For women, these bonds often meant safety, an assurance that their children would be cared for. For men, intimacy could mean securing alliances that stretched beyond their own camps, sometimes bridging rival tribes. In a world without written treaties, intimacy was the closest thing to diplomacy. It could dissolve rivalries, forge peace, and stabilize fragile groups. But not everyone navigated this language well. Jealousy and betrayal threatened the tribe's harmony. Those who managed intimacy wisely, leaders who balanced loyalty, attraction, and fairness, became the true anchors of early human society. They weren't always the strongest fighters, but they were the ones who could hold the group together when tensions ran high. In this way, desire shaped leadership, unity, and survival itself. Fire, tools, and weapons may have built the material world, but sex quietly dictated who thrived and who was left behind. As human groups became more stable, something remarkable shifted. Sex was no longer just a fleeting act of desire. It began to plant the seeds of family. A single union between two individuals wasn't just about pleasure or reproduction, it rippled across generations. Knowledge, skills, and survival strategies were now passed on alongside genes. When a skilled hunter bonded with a reliable partner, their connection meant far more than intimacy. It was a partnership of shared food, shared protection, and shared responsibility for children. In a harsh world filled with predators and scarcity, children raised by two caregivers stood a much greater chance of surviving than those raised alone. This simple yet profound shift from temporary desire to lasting bond reshaped human destiny. For the first time, survival wasn't only about who could hunt the biggest prey or gather the most berries. It became about cooperation, trust, and commitment. These early family units created the foundation for something bigger than themselves. The roots of culture, continuity, and society. What began as instinct slowly evolved into an anchor of human life, the family around the flickering firelight. Intimacy did something extraordinary. It became a bridge between generations. Parents who had formed strong pair bonds didn't just share food and protection, they shared knowledge. The fire became a classroom, and sex threw its role in creating stable families was the glue that held this transfer of wisdom together. Children watched and learned as their parents crafted stone tools, tracked the movements of animals, or read the stars for guidance. These skills, passed down from parent to child, weren't lost with time. They were preserved, inherited, and improved upon. Without the stability of bonded families, much of this knowledge might have vanished. With each passing generation, what began as desire had become a survival mechanism that extended far beyond reproduction. Intimacy was now shaping culture. Every story told, every skill handed down, every ritual shared at night was rooted in the bonds forged through sex and trust. In this way, the act of bonding created continuity. It turned survival into heritage, ensuring that humanity didn't just live from day to day, but built something lasting: society itself. As families multiplied and tribes grew, intimacy expanded its role even further. It wasn't just about two people surviving together. Anymore, it became the foundation of larger communities. The trust built within partnerships spilled over into the tribe, creating bonds that went beyond bloodlines. Stable pairings meant more reliable food sharing, collective childcare, and stronger defenses against predators or rival groups. A tribe wasn't just a random collection of individuals. It was an interwoven web of relationships, many of which were strengthened through intimacy. The same desire that once sparked fleeting moments now shaped loyalty and structure. This new social fabric was the beginning of culture itself. Around the fire, people didn't just teach, they created rituals, dances, and symbols that celebrated fertility, love, and partnership. These weren't just about pleasure or beauty, they were survival strategies disguised as traditions. Each story and ritual reinforced the idea that bonds mattered, that connection wasn't optional but essential. In this way, sex became society's quiet architect. It transformed survival into stability and fleeting passion into the roots of civilization. Without it, human culture might never have formed. As tribes grew larger and resources became harder to share equally, intimacy took on a new role. It became a tool of influence. A glance across the fire wasn't just attraction anymore. It could be a political statement. Who chose whom and when mattered. These bonds decided alliances, shaped rivalries, and determined whose voice carried weight in the tribe. A skilled hunter might share more than meat. He could share affection, promising loyalty in return for trust. A gatherer with sharp instincts might form multiple connections, ensuring that her influence stretched across different families in the group. Intimacy wasn't hidden in the shadows. It was woven into the tribe's hierarchy, affecting who was listened to, who was protected, and who rose to leadership. But this influence wasn't always peaceful. Forbidden pairings sparked jealousy, creating fractures within the tribe. When loyalty and attraction clashed, sparks flew, sometimes literally, as disputes turned violent. This was the tightrope early humans walked. Intimacy could hold the tribe together or tear it apart. It was politics at its most primal, where desire wasn't just personal, but a form of silent negotiation that shaped survival. Beyond the firelight, intimacy often acted as the earliest form of diplomacy. When a hunter returned with a prized killer deer, a boar, or even part of a mammoth, his choice of whom to share it with carried a message. Offering food wasn't only generosity, it was a declaration. It could mean, I choose you, I trust you, stand with me. In these moments, sex and survival were inseparable. Intimacy became a quiet but powerful way to seal unspoken deals. A partnership wasn't always born out of passion. It could be a calculated move to ensure protection, share resources, or even strengthen alliances with neighboring groups. One union could prevent conflict between families, create a peace treaty without words, or forge a network of loyalty that extended beyond bloodlines. The tribe's leaders understood this well. True power wasn't just in strength or skill, it was in managing these invisible threads of attraction and loyalty. Those who navigated intimacy wisely could unify people better than any weapon could. In a world without kings, crowns, or written laws, desire became the most influential form of politics. Its whispers shaping the tribe's future as much as any hunt. But intimacy was never without danger. With every bond formed, jealousy and rivalry lurked close behind. A forbidden pairing, such as a leader's partner showing affection to another, could ignite disputes that threatened the fragile unity of the tribe. These conflicts forced early humans to establish unspoken rules: respect existing bonds, share fairly, and avoid betrayal. Breaking these invisible codes could mean exile, loss of protection, or even death. In a world where survival depended on cooperation, being cast out was a punishment worse than violence. And yet, those who managed this balance with skill often rose as leaders. They weren't always the strongest hunters or fiercest warriors. Instead, they were the ones who could navigate desire with tact, turning intimacy into an instrument of stability. They became the glue that held the tribe together. So while fire and tools shaped the material world, it was intimacy, the careful management of attraction, loyalty, and power that shaped the social one. Sex wasn't just reproduction or pleasure. It was survival strategy, leadership, and politics rolled into one, quietly dictating who thrived, who faltered, and who held influence in humanity's earliest societies.